Integrating people in an M&A is always a challenge. Supporting and steering employees during the transition process is what Girdhar Balwani suggests to achieve the operational and strategic objectives of the acquisition. In this episode of the Leadership Series, he dwells on these challenges.
So this is about a pharmaceutical company which I joined about 4 years ago, and this company was primarily in the field of servicing the other pharmaceutical companies. So what we call as a contract sales organization, providing field forces for other pharmaceutical companies. Most of our revenue was coming from that. The problem with that business model was that low margins, and the second was that these contracts were usually short term. So based on that, what we did was certain strategic initiatives, and one was to improve our dependence on our own brands and less on the CSO model. At that point of time when I joined, about 90% of the revenue was coming from the CSO business and about 10% was coming from two brands which we had. As we started looking at ways of trying to improve our brand portfolio to reduce our dependence on the CSO business. On the one hand, we acquired a business which was an Indian-based company. We acquired a large portfolio of about 70 brands from that company. The other thing what also happened at that point of time, a European company acquired our Asia Pacific company, and because of that we also had some more brands which came in. So suddenly from two brands we landed up with almost 30 brands. That was a great opportunity in terms of improving our dependence on our own brands rather than on the CSO business. So as against 10% coming from brands, now we had a business which 80% of our revenue was coming from our own brands. However, while this was good in terms of improving our brand portfolio, we had to see how we can integrate the three businesses. So one was the business which we already had. The second was the business that we acquired, the Indian company. And third was the acquiring company which was also present in the country. So we're trying to bring in three different organizations together due to this merger and acquisition situation. The initial challenge, of course, was in terms of setting the right structure. So we did formalize a proper structure which would integrate all the three businesses together. Then the challenge came in terms of also setting up processes in place. That was the next phase in terms of bringing in consistency in terms of policies across one organization instead of three. One of the other important things in M&As is to have the right support from the most senior management which is outside the country, also for the identified local management team. This was again very unique because we had three organizations virtually coming together in an M&A activity. So it's very important to manage the expectations and the value systems and the cultures. So what we did after we had identified the structure and the senior leadership team, we brought in all the managers to an offsite meeting outside the office where people from the more senior level, from the corporate headquarters, from the regional office, flew down here and gave a clear message to the rest of the organization that this is what we've identified in terms of the team. This is what we will do in terms of processes. This is very important, especially to have that support from the corporate headquarters outside India. The main problem came next, which was looking at the people aspect. And we had these three different sales organizations at different levels of competence. The company that we acquired, the Indian company that we acquired, was primarily selling products based on relationships with doctors. The products which we had earlier with the two products and one sales team, they were overall people who were underpaid and not very good in terms of selling skills. The third company which actually acquired us also were people who were sort of midway in terms of sales force effectiveness. So what we did was ran through a proper program called Development of Selling Skills, which is the Sales Edge, because you have to fit these people into the structure as well as the processes. And some of them, like I mentioned earlier, were people who could adapt and develop themselves to come up to the desired skill level, but some of them could not. So we were conscious of this fact. It might have some impact on doctors, especially the team which we acquired. These reps were primarily selling based on relationships, and we were trying to make them more scientific selling people. And if they were not coming up to our standards, we would then have a problem. The second thing which we looked at in terms of the sales edge process was also to look at the first line managers, because it is very important that the first line manager is really the coach to the medical representative in the field, and it's very important to focus on these people. And a similar process was done. We had an internal program developed on coaching skills, which we trained all these first line managers. So we're trying to manage the transition in a way that we had to do it gradually. So we ran through the organization an assessment center, tried to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of all the people across the organization, and tried to fit them in wherever we could. Those who could not be fitted in, we looked at either trying to put them under a development program where we felt that these people could improve themselves or develop themselves quickly to be able to align themselves to the new organization. Those who could not, we had to ask them to find opportunities in other companies by offering them a good separation package. So we set the climate. However, even though we did all this and we were trying to be transparent as well as fair to everyone, there were some people obviously who were not too happy. There was somebody very senior in the organization who landed up being downgraded almost 2 levels. At least we felt that he had the competence, but he didn't have the competence for the level which he was at for that previously. He was obviously not happy and reacted in terms of sending messages and emails and trying to criticize the new management of the organization and trying to spread negativity across the company. So we had to identify and ask him to leave. There was another example where we had a manager in the eastern part of the country. He was actually the member of a local political party. He was a corporator, and we didn't even know that. But all these came up. We had to clean up that part. We had to ask that person to go. There are a lot of people who are operating based on relationships within the organization, which were more political. So it required being very firm. We were also conscious of what we wanted in terms of recruitment, because in the pharmaceutical industry, the attrition levels were high. So there was a major drive in terms of recruitment. And during the recruitment process, we were very conscious of what we wanted and be able to clearly identify the right skills in the people whom we were hiring. We are almost there now, and now the next challenge, of course, for us is to look at those people who are committed, had the right basic value systems and competencies, to try to move them up in terms of their level of competence. And we are now working on that process. We'll continue to run assessment centers, have got proper job description in place, and looking at how we can develop people through both internal as well as external development programs. And I think that's where we are headed, and we're happy to see that now we've moved to almost 90% revenue coming from our own brands. The growth rates have been very good. We've received recognition both internally as well as externally, and put the company on a growth path.